I'm standing in front of my own house, holding keys that no longer work, staring at a bright red "sold" sign planted in the front yard like a gravestone. My daughter sold my house while I was planning my husband's funeral. Let that sink in for a moment. If you're watching this story, please hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you will shock you to your core. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I have a feeling this story is going to resonate with people all over the world who've been betrayed by their own family. My name is Eleanor, and at 68 years old, I thought I knew my daughter. I thought I could trust the child I raised, the woman I supported through college, through her real estate career, through her divorce. I was wrong. Dead wrong. 3 months ago, I was a grieving widow who trusted her daughter completely. Today, I'm a woman who discovered that sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the most devastating betrayal. But here's what my daughter Rebecca didn't know. Her father was always 3 steps ahead of her greed. This story has more twists than a mountain highway, and by the time I'm finished, you'll understand why sometimes the best revenge is simply letting karma do its job. Because what happened to Rebecca? Well, let's just say she's currently wearing an orange jumpsuit and has plenty of time to think about her choices. I stood there looking at that "sold" sign on my house, holding keys that no longer worked, and I felt something I hadn't felt since David died. Pure, righteous anger. Little did Rebecca know, her father was always 3 steps ahead of her greed, and she was about to learn exactly what happens when you steal from someone whose husband spent 45 years protecting her from people just like her. But this story starts 3 months earlier, when I thought I had the perfect family. 3 months before I stood in front of that "sold" sign, my life was completely different. David and I had just celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary. We were finally enjoying retirement, sleeping in, taking long walks, planning trips we'd put off for decades. Life was good. Life was peaceful. Rebecca was doing so well then, or so I thought. She had her real estate license, her own office, a beautiful condo downtown. She'd come over every Sunday for dinner, bringing flowers and wine, telling us about her latest sales, her biggest commissions. "Mom and Dad," she'd say, "business is booming. I'm finally making the kind of money you always hoped I would." David would pat her hand and smile. "We're proud of you, sweetheart. Just remember what's really important in life." I should have paid more attention to how she rolled her eyes when he said things like that. David had always been protective of me. 45 years of marriage, and he still opened doors, still brought me coffee in bed, still handled all the financial paperwork because he said I shouldn't have to worry about boring money stuff. I loved that about him. I felt safe, cherished, protected. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March, David collapsed in our kitchen while making his famous pancakes. Heart attack. Massive. Fatal. The paramedics tried everything, but my husband of 45 years was gone before the ambulance even reached the hospital. The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements, casseroles from neighbors, and Rebecca taking charge of everything. "Don't worry about anything, Mom," she kept saying, her arm around my shoulders as I sat in that funeral home choosing flowers and caskets. "I'll handle all the paperwork. Dad would want you to be taken care of, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Rebecca's eyes lit up when the funeral director mentioned life insurance. How quickly she volunteered to help with David's estate. The strange eagerness in her voice when she said, "Mom, you shouldn't have to deal with all this legal stuff while you're grieving." At the time, I was grateful. I was drowning in grief, barely able to get dressed in the morning, let alone navigate lawyers and banks and insurance companies. Rebecca seemed like an angel, swooping in to save me from the overwhelming details of death. "You just focus on healing, Mom," she'd say, patting my hand. "I've got everything under control." I was so grateful for Rebecca's help. I had no idea she was already planning to destroy me. The weeks after David's funeral passed in a fog of grief so thick I could barely function. I'd wake up each morning forgetting he was gone, reaching for his side of the bed, making 2 cups of coffee out of habit. The silence in our house was deafening. Rebecca was there constantly during those first few weeks, which I thought was wonderful. She'd let herself in with her spare key, bringing groceries, doing laundry, making sure I ate something. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly right now," she'd say gently. Let me handle Dad's affairs. You shouldn't have to deal with banks and lawyers while you're grieving. It seemed reasonable. It seemed loving. She brought me papers to sign. Lots of papers. These are just routine estate documents, she'd explain, pointing to signature lines with her perfectly manicured finger. Standard stuff the lawyer needs. You don't need to read every page. It's all legal jargon anyway. I trusted her completely. She was my daughter. Why would I question her? People started coming to the house, men in suits who introduced themselves as estate planners and financial advisors. They'd sit at my kitchen table with Rebecca, speaking in low voices about portfolio management and asset protection. I'd hover in the doorway, feeling lost and stupid, and Rebecca would wave me away. Don't worry about this boring stuff, Mom. We're just making sure everything's set up to take care of you. Then came the day I learned to pay attention to details. I was at the grocery store, the same store where David and I had shopped for 20 years, buying the same brand of tea I'd always bought. When I handed the cashier my credit card, she swiped it and frowned. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card is being declined. Do you have another form of payment?" Declined? That was impossible. David had always kept plenty of money in our accounts. I tried my debit card. Also declined. "There must be some mistake with your card, Mom," Rebecca said later when I called her, panicked. "Let me pay for your groceries. I'll call the bank tomorrow and sort this out." But something cold settled in my stomach that day. Something that whispered that maybe, just maybe, things weren't as simple as Rebecca was making them seem. That declined credit card was just the beginning of discovering how deep Rebecca's betrayal went. The morning I found the eviction notice taped to my front door, I thought there had been some terrible mistake. Eviction? From my own house? The house David and I had paid off 15 years ago? I called Rebecca immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. "Rebecca, honey, there's some kind of mix-up. Someone's trying to evict me from my own house." There was a pause. A long pause. Then Rebecca's voice, cooler than I'd ever heard it. "Mom, we need to talk. I'm coming over." She arrived an hour later, not with flowers and groceries like usual, but with a briefcase and a look I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost excited. "Mom, sit down," she said, settling. She herself at my kitchen table like she owned the place, which, as it turned out, she did. "The house is sold, Mom. I have power of attorney. Everything's legal." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Sold? What do you mean sold? This is my house. David left it to me." Rebecca opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "Actually, Mom, according to the will we found, Dad left everything in a trust with me as the executor, and frankly, you can't handle living alone anymore. You're forgetting things, you're confused about money. Look at what happened with your credit cards." "You mean the cards you somehow got canceled?" Rebecca's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something ugly underneath. "Dad should have thought about this before he died and left you so helpless. I'm doing what's best for you. By selling my house without telling me? The house needed significant repairs you couldn't afford. I found you a lovely assisted living facility. You'll be much better off there. I know what's best for you." I stared at this stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Rebecca, this is my home. David and I built our life here. You can't just—" "Actually, I can. And I have. The new owners take possession next week. I've already put a deposit down on Sunset Manor. It's a very nice place, Mom. You'll make friends." Sunset Manor. I'd driven past it before. A grim brick building that looked more like a prison than a home. "I'm not going anywhere, Rebecca. This is insane." Rebecca stood up, straightening her designer jacket. "The house is sold. Your accounts are frozen pending the estate settlement. You have no choice. The assisted living facility will pick you up Friday morning." "And if I refuse?" Rebecca shrugged. "Then you'll be homeless. Is that really what you want?" I watched my daughter pack up my life like I was already dead. She took the good jewelry, the valuable artwork, even David's vintage watch collection. "These need to be properly appraised. Said for the estate," she explained when I protested. "Don't worry, you'll get your fair share of my own belongings." Within a week, I was sitting in a tiny room at Sunset Manor, staring at bare walls and wondering how my life had gone so wrong so fast. My beautiful home, the place where I'd raised Rebecca, where David and I had planned to grow old together, was gone. My bank accounts were frozen. My credit cards were canceled. Even my car had been temporarily taken for maintenance. I felt completely defeated, but something David once told me kept nagging at my mind. In that tiny assisted living room, surrounded by the few possessions Rebecca had deemed appropriate for my new life, I kept thinking about something strange. The week before David died, he'd been acting secretive, not suspicious, just focused, like he was working on a project he didn't want to discuss yet. I'd found him in his study several times, papers spread across his desk, talking quietly on the phone. When I'd ask what he was working on, he'd just smile and say, "Just tying up some loose ends, honey. Making sure you're taken care of if anything happens to me." "David," I remembered saying, "nothing's going to happen to you. We're going to be together for 20 more years." He'd pulled me close and kissed my forehead. "I hope so. But a man needs to protect his wife from all the wolves in the world, even the ones that look like family." At the time, I thought he was being overly dramatic. Now, sitting in that depressing room, I wondered if David had known something I didn't. I also remembered something else. Rebecca's spending habits, the expensive clothes, the luxury car, the downtown condo that seemed awfully fancy for a real estate agent's salary, and David's comments about it. "Rebecca's always been good at spending money she doesn't have," he'd said once. "I just hope he doesn't get herself into real trouble." "She's doing well, David. Her business is booming." "Is it? Or is she just good at making it look that way?" David always said, "Rebecca's greed will be her downfall someday." I'd thought he was being too harsh. Now I wondered if he'd been preparing for exactly what had happened. That's when I remembered Attorney Martinez. David had used the same lawyer for 20 years, a kind, thorough man who'd handled our house purchase, our wills, David's business contracts. If anyone would know what David had really intended, it would be him. I called his office from the assisted living facility's phone, my hands trembling as I dialed. "Martinez Associates, how can I help you?" "This is Eleanor Martinez. Eleanor Thompson. My husband was David Thompson. He was a client of Mr. Martinez's." "Oh, Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry for your loss. Mr. Martinez has been trying to reach you. Could you come in this week?" "Trying to reach me?" Yes, I can come in, but I should tell you, I'm having some issues with my daughter regarding my husband's estate." There was a pause. "Mrs. Thompson, your husband was very specific about protecting you from certain situations. Can you come in tomorrow morning?" My heart started beating faster. Yes, I can. "Mrs. Eleanor, these power of attorney papers your daughter showed you, something's not right about them." Attorney Martinez's next phone call would reveal a truth that would change everything. I took a taxi to Attorney Martinez's office the next morning, using the small amount of cash I'd hidden in my jewelry box, one of the few things Rebecca hadn't thought to search. My hands were shaking as I walked into that familiar office where David and I had signed our first mortgage papers 20 years ago. Attorney Martinez looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp and concerned as he welcomed me in. "Mrs. Thompson, please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." He opened a thick file folder with David's name on it. "First, let me say how sorry I am for your loss. David was not just a client, he was a friend, and he was very, very worried about you." "Worried about me?" "Specifically, he was worried about what might happen to you if he died first. He came to see me the week before his heart attack." My breath caught. "The week before?" "Yes. He wanted to update his will, again. He said he'd been watching Rebecca's spending habits, her attitude toward money, and he was concerned. He used the exact words, 'I need to protect Eleanor from our daughter's greed.'" Attorney Martinez pulled out a document I'd never seen before. "This is your husband's real will, Mrs. Thompson. Updated and notarized exactly 1 week before he passed away." I stared at the papers, my vision blurring with tears. "But Rebecca showed me a will." She said, "Whatever Rebecca showed you was either forged or an old version from 15 years ago. This is the current legal will." He pointed to the date, to David's signature, to the notary stamp. "Your husband knew exactly what your daughter would try to do." "What does it say?" Attorney Martinez leaned forward. You are the sole beneficiary of everything, Mrs. Thompson. The house, the investments, the life insurance, the savings accounts, everything goes to you with ironclad protections against anyone attempting to manipulate or defraud you. David even wrote a specific clause about Rebecca. He turned the page and read, I have observed concerning behavior from my daughter Rebecca regarding money and entitlement. If she attempts to manipulate or defraud my wife Eleanor in any way, she is to receive nothing from my estate and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Rebecca's greed has consumed her soul, and I will not allow her to destroy the woman I love. I covered my mouth with my hands, tears streaming down my face. Even in death, David was protecting me. Mrs. Thompson, everything your daughter has done is fraud. Every single thing. The power of attorney she used was forged. The house sale was illegal. The frozen accounts were theft. She's committed multiple felonies. But she said she had legal right. She had no rights whatsoever. According to this will, she doesn't even inherit $1 if she attempts to defraud you, which she has, extensively. Attorney Martinez leaned back in his chair. Your husband was a smart man, Mrs. Thompson. He set up multiple safeguards. He gave me specific instructions to contact you immediately if anything happened to him, and to take action if anyone tried to manipulate you. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, but Rebecca apparently intercepted my calls. So what happens now? Now we get your life back, and we make sure Rebecca faces the consequences of what she's done. Armed with the truth, it was time to confront my daughter and show her that her father's love was stronger than her greed. Attorney Martinez and I planned the confrontation carefully. He wanted Rebecca to incriminate herself further, to make sure our case was ironclad. Let her think she's still in control, he advised. Let her show us exactly how deep this fraud goes. I walked into Rebecca's real estate office on a Thursday afternoon, carrying David's real will in a manila envelope. Rebecca was at her desk on the phone, and when she saw me, she held up one finger in that universal, wait a minute gesture that used to make me feel small. Not anymore. She finished her call and looked up with that fake smile I now recognized. Mom, what a surprise. You're supposed to call before leaving the facility. Hello, Rebecca. I think we need to discuss your father's real will. Her smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Mom, we've been through this. Dad's will was very clear about the arrangement. I sat down across from her desk and pulled out the documents. Actually, Rebecca, I've discovered that the will you showed me was either forged or 15 years out of date. This is your father's actual will, updated 1 week before he died. Rebecca's face went white, but she reached for the papers with steady hands. I watched her eyes move across the page, watched her realize that everything she'd done was not just morally wrong, but completely illegal. This can't be right, she stammered. I have power of attorney. The lawyer said, What lawyer, Rebecca? Because David's actual lawyer, Attorney Martinez, has been trying to reach me for weeks. The same Attorney Martinez who notarized this will. The same Attorney Martinez who's been building a case against you for elder abuse and fraud. Rebecca's mask finally completely slipped. You stupid old woman, she hissed. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed taking care of you? The opportunities I've lost dealing with your neediness? Taking care of me? You sold my house and stole my money. I saved you from making stupid decisions. You would have lost everything anyway. At least this way the money stays in the family. Whose family, Rebecca? Because according to this will, if you attempt to defraud me, which you have, you inherit nothing. $0. That's when Rebecca showed me who she really was. You think you're so smart? You think this changes anything? I've already moved the money offshore. The house sale is final. There's nothing you can do to stop me. Actually, there is. Attorney Martinez walked in, followed by 2 police officers. Rebecca's face went from anger to panic in the space of a heartbeat. Rebecca Martinez, Officer Thompson said, you're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and grand theft. But Mom, you're confused. You signed everything willingly. Rebecca's voice was high and desperate now. Officer, my mother isn't thinking clearly. She's grief-stricken and confused. Mrs. Martinez, Attorney Martinez said calmly, we have recordings of you admitting to moving money offshore and acknowledging the house sale was fraudulent. We also have evidence that you've done this to other elderly clients. That stopped Rebecca cold. Other clients? We've been investigating your real estate practice for months, Mrs. Martinez. You've systematically defrauded at least 20 elderly clients using the same methods you used on your mother. As the officers handcuffed Rebecca, she looked at me with pure hatred. How could you do this to your own daughter? I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. I didn't do this to you, Rebecca. You did this to yourself, and more importantly, you did this to me, your own mother. Please, Mom, think of the family. I am thinking of the family. The family your father and I built. The family you destroyed with your greed. Watching Rebecca in handcuffs was just the beginning of her downfall. Within 48 hours of Rebecca's arrest, my life began to transform back into something I recognized. Attorney Martinez worked with lightning speed to reverse all of Rebecca's fraudulent actions. The house sale was immediately invalidated. Turns out you can't sell someone else's property with forged documents, no matter how official they look. Moving back into my home felt like resurrection. Walking through rooms Rebecca had stripped bare, I felt David's presence everywhere. You did it, honey, I whispered to his photograph. You protected me, even from our own daughter. The investigation into Rebecca's activities was swift and thorough. It turned out my daughter had been running a sophisticated fraud operation for years, specifically targeting elderly clients who'd lost spouses. She'd identify vulnerable widows and widowers, gain their trust, then systematically steal their assets using forged documents and fake powers of attorney. I wasn't just a victim. I was evidence in a federal case. Mrs. Thompson, FBI agent Sarah Chen explained during one of many interviews, your daughter is facing charges in multiple states. We've identified at least 23 elderly victims over the past 5 years. The total theft amount is approaching $2 million. $2 million. Rebecca had stolen $2 million from people like me. People who'd lost their spouses and trusted their children, their advisors, their community members, to help them navigate their grief. How did she get away with it for so long? Shame, Agent Chen said simply. Many elderly fraud victims don't report the crimes because they're embarrassed they fell for it, or because the perpetrator is a family member. They don't want to see prosecuted. You're the first victim who's fighting back with everything you've got. Fighting back. I like the sound of that. Rebecca's real estate license was immediately revoked. Her assets were frozen and would be used to compensate her victims. Her downtown condo, her luxury car, her designer clothes, all of it purchased with stolen money from people she was supposed to help. But the best part? David had included a clause in his will that not only cut Rebecca out of any inheritance, but also included punitive damages if she attempted fraud. I wasn't just getting my life back, I was getting compensation for what she'd put me through. David's love protected me even after death, I told Attorney Martinez as we reviewed the settlement papers. He knew exactly what she would try to do. Your husband was a wise man, and he raised a strong woman, even if it took a crisis to bring that strength out. Strong. I was starting to feel that again. I'm not the helpless widow Rebecca thought she could manipulate, I said, signing the papers that would restore my financial independence. And I want to make sure no other elderly person goes through what I went through. What do you have in mind? Every elderly person deserves to feel safe from family predators. I think it's time I started speaking up about what happened to me. But the story doesn't end with Rebecca's arrest. The ripple effects would shock everyone. Rebecca's federal trial was scheduled for 6 months after her arrest, but the FBI investigation kept uncovering more and more victims. What started as a case of elder abuse against one mother had exploded into a federal fraud prosecution spanning multiple states. Mrs. Thompson, FBI agent Chen called me one morning. We need you to know that your daughter's crimes were even more extensive than we originally thought. We've now identified 47 elderly victims across 5 states. 47 people, 47 families destroyed by my daughter's greed. The trial was a media sensation. Local real estate agent accused of systematic elder fraud read the headlines. Rebecca's picture was in every newspaper, on every local news channel. The same face that used to bring me flowers every Sunday was now the face of one of the largest elder fraud cases in state history. I testified on the 3rd day of the trial. Walking into that courtroom, Seeing Rebecca at the defendant's table in her orange jumpsuit, I felt a mixture of sadness and satisfaction I'd never experienced before. "Mrs. Thompson," the prosecutor asked, "can you tell the court about your relationship with the defendant before your husband's death?" "She was my daughter. I trusted her completely. I loved her unconditionally. I supported her dreams, her career, her life choices. I never imagined she was capable of what she did to me." "And what did she do to you?" I looked directly at Rebecca as I answered. "She systematically stole my life, my home, my money, my independence, my dignity. She did it while I was grieving my husband's death, and she did it with a smile on her face. Rebecca wouldn't meet my eyes. The prosecutor presented evidence of Rebecca's luxurious lifestyle: vacations to Europe funded by stolen inheritance money, designer clothes purchased with widow's life insurance payouts, a sports car bought with an elderly man's retirement savings. "Your daughter exploited at least 47 elderly clients over 7 years," Agent Chen testified. "The total theft amount is now calculated at $3.2 million. This was not impulsive behavior. This was a calculated, systematic operation designed to exploit the most vulnerable members of our society." Other victims testified too. Martha, an 82-year-old woman who lost her house after Rebecca forged her signature on a reverse mortgage. James, a 75-year-old widower who lost his entire retirement fund to Rebecca's fake investment scheme. Sarah, a 69-year-old breast cancer survivor who lost her life insurance money while recovering from chemotherapy. Each story was more heartbreaking than the last. Each story could have been mine. When it came time for sentencing, the judge looked directly at Rebecca. "Mrs. Martinez, you have systematically preyed upon the elderly members of our community during their most vulnerable moments. You have shown no remorse, no acknowledgement of the devastating impact of your crimes. You have violated the most basic trust between family members and between professionals and their clients." He paused, looking at the stack of victim impact statements. "I sentence you to 96 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution to all victims, and you are permanently barred from working in real estate, financial services, or any position involving access to elderly clients' personal information." 8 years. Rebecca got 8 years in federal prison. "Mrs. Eleanor, your courage in coming forward helped us save dozens of other families from your daughter's crimes," Agent Chen told me after the sentencing. "Many elderly fraud victims never report the crimes. You didn't just get justice for yourself, you got justice for everyone she hurt." As I watched Rebecca led away in chains for the final time, I realized this experience had given me something precious. 6 months after Rebecca's sentencing, I was standing in front of a room full of seniors at the Riverside Community Center, about to give my first public speech about elder fraud prevention. I was nervous, but I was also determined. "My name is Eleanor Thompson, and I'm 68 years old," I began. 6 months ago, my own daughter stole my house, my money, and my independence while I was grieving my husband's death. Today, I'm here to make sure it never happens to you." The room was completely silent, 47 faces staring at me with a mixture of sympathy and recognition. How many of them had children they trusted completely? How many had signed papers without reading them? How many had handed over financial control because they were overwhelmed by grief or illness? I want you to know that what happened to me can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how educated you are, or how close your family seems to be. When we're vulnerable, and we all become vulnerable eventually, predators can smell it from miles away. I told them about the warning signs I'd missed: the rushed paperwork, the isolation from professional advisors, the gradual erosion of financial independence, the manipulation disguised as help. But I also want you to know that you are stronger than you think. You have rights, you have resources, and you have people who will fight for you if you let them. After my speech, a dozen, and people came up to me with their own stories. Margaret, whose son had been borrowing money from her accounts. Frank, whose daughter-in-law kept pressuring him to change his will. Alice, whose nephew had moved in to help and then started selling her belongings. "What should we do?" they asked. "Fight back," I told them. "Document everything. Talk to professionals you trust. Don't sign anything you haven't read completely. And remember, no one has the right to steal your dignity, no matter how much they claim to love you. That was the beginning of my new life purpose. I started an elder abuse advocacy organization called David's Shield, named after my husband's determination to protect me even after death. We provide free legal consultations, financial reviews, and support groups for elderly people who've experienced family fraud. Rebecca is currently serving her sentence at a federal facility in another state. She's lost her home, her career, her freedom, and her family. She writes me letters sometimes. Apologies mixed with excuses, promises to change mixed with blame for destroying her life. I don't respond. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. I'm 68 years old and stronger than I've ever been, I told a reporter who interviewed me for a story about elder fraud prevention. My daughter thought she could steal my life because I was grieving and vulnerable. Instead, she gave me a new purpose. What would you say to other elderly people who might be experiencing similar situations? David's greatest gift wasn't money. It was teaching me my own worth. No family member has the right to steal your dignity. No one has the right to exploit your grief, and it's never too late to fight back. The reporter asked one final question. Do you regret turning in your own daughter? I thought for a long moment. If my story can help one elderly person stand up to abuse, then Rebecca's betrayal served a purpose. She didn't just steal from me. She stole from 47 vulnerable people. Someone had to stop her. Today, I live independently in the home David and I shared for 20 years. I manage my own finances, make my own decisions, and help other elderly people protect themselves from the wolves in their lives, even the ones that look like family. Rebecca thought she was stealing my future. Instead, she gave me the strength to build a better one. If you or someone you know is facing elder abuse, you are not alone. There are resources available, there are people who will fight for you, and there are laws designed to protect you. Don't let shame or family loyalty keep you silent. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of triumph over family betrayal. And remember, you are stronger than you know. Your voice matters. Your life matters. And it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Thanks for listening to my story. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with someone who might need to hear it, and let me know in the comments if you've experienced something similar. Together, we can protect each other from those who would exploit our trust. Remember, love protects, but real love doesn't steal. Real love doesn't manipulate. Real love doesn't exploit vulnerability. You deserve better, and you have the strength to fight for it.